Hi, welcome back to Believe, a Ted Lasso podcast.
Must we start every episode with you trying to make me giggle? I feel like that's how we start every episode.
I think it brings the right energy to this podcast.
Okay.
Two grown men giggling with each other. Isn't that the theme?
Start a synopsis.
As I was saying, welcome to Believe, a Ted Lasso podcast. I'm Julian,
I'm Tom. Hi, everybody.
and this is the start of season 2.
Yes. Excited.
We took a long time off. We did some travels.
Mhm.
We regrouped.
Yeah, we went to London. We toured Selhurst Park. We went to the pub where they filmed it.
Yep, the Anchor and Crown.
We did none of this.
No, we did not. But we're back to talk about episode 1 of season 2, which is called
Goodbye, Earl.
Now, Goodbye Earl. I was surprised this episode was not about the Dixie Chicks song, Goodbye Earl. They're classic. I guess that, well, you would know them as the Chicks.
Excuse me.
Yes, I know them as the Dixie Chicks.
After their rebranding.
Yes. No, the episode title, Goodbye Earl. If you have not watched the episode, I would recommend
Please.
stopping this podcast.
At least the first 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, and
come
watch
back.
Oh, yes. So Goodbye Earl, written by Brendan Hunt. We will go through the themes of this episode, which are superstition. Every sports person, I think, is to some extent superstitious.
Yeah.
So we dive into that. We dive into what Roy is doing. Roy Kent, he's here, he's there, he's in retirement. What he's doing in retirement, as well as this just sets up season 2.
Mhm.
After such a glorious season 1, we're into season 2. And Tom, I have only watched episode 1. How many episodes have you watched this season?
I've only watched episode 1 as well. So we are doing this. We know I think the season has been completely finished at this point.
I think they just released 11, and it's 12 episodes this season.
Oh,
They
some
did announce that.
bonus eps.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we thought it was 10. It's 12. So we're going to be here for most of them until our wives tell us we can't do this anymore. Episode opens up with...
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you
go
before you
ahead.
even get in.
Yeah.
Did you see the title before you watched the episode? Because I saw Goodbye Earl, and I kept racking my brain thinking,
Who's Earl?
who's Earl?
I also saw the episode title, and I wondered... And then I was like, oh, yeah, the Dixie Chicks song. It's got to
Okay,
play
that's where
into
you
that.
went.
That's
Okay.
where I went.
Okay, didn't even know it was.
I'm not even sure that song's called Goodbye Earl, but it has something to do with Earl and Earl going goodbye.
Close
So,
enough. The internet will fix us.
thank you. We start off this episode coming in hot. We're in the middle of the game. Very quickly through the announcers, we find out that we're like 7 games into the season.
Yep.
So we were relegated at the end of season 1.
In the Championship League.
Okay, so at least 7 weeks have gone by. I mean, there's
6,
an
7.
off season and 7 weeks of play, right?
And off seasons are notoriously quick in European football. Yeah, they seemingly play year round. There's some breaks kind of in between some of the season where they play like international games, international friendlies, getting ready for the World Cup, or Euros is another big tournament that plays. But yeah, there's only maybe a month or 2 off of football, and then boom, they're right back in it.
Right. So for us in America, typically our summer we're off from football, and their winter is our summer. I believe, based on them being on the opposite end of the poles from us.
And I might get this wrong, but I believe the start of the Premier League is in August.
Okay. I've never looked at a globe before. That was the joke that you totally...
Oh, sorry. I was thinking about my retort and not what you were actually saying.
Oh, well.
Classic
podcasting. So we're on the pitch. We open up with an extreme unibrow close-up of our boy Nate. Nate's back. It's him, Beard, and Ted on the sideline. And through the announcers, once again, using the announcers, Rojas, our man Dani Rojas, has a penalty kick. Something has happened. And there's a mention there from the announcers. I don't know if you caught it, but Rojas apparently saved Colin, whose mistake allowed for some sort of goal or something to happen. The announcer makes some comment about how Colin's, I don't know, he uses soccer terms, football terms, as you would say.
Yes.
And so we find out 7 straight ties. So they're all nervous because they want to win. And if Rojas can score, he's going to get a win.
Yep.
And then we have the line from Nate, is it okay to pray? And Ted, being the universalist that he is, I'm assuming, although him being from the Midwest, I would question this. He says, yeah, but to which God in what language? Which is great. Beard's reply is essentially, it's just as good to wish and cross your fingers.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's odd too because so Nate and Beard, I guess Nate starts it. Nate crosses his fingers,
right.
Then Beard crosses his fingers. Lasso looks at both of them, but he keeps his hands in his pockets, which I think is interesting because later on we'll see kind of how Ted believes in superstition seemingly, but he doesn't cross his fingers in this moment.
This season we're going to pay attention to what Ted believes in other than people and people that believe in themselves.
Yeah, and ghosts.
And we're introduced to Earl the Greyhound, who is on the sideline watching this kick happen.
Very close to the sidelines.
Very close to the sideline. Now, it was great to see Earl the Greyhound come in from season 1. We had so much fun with him from season 1.
Yeah.
Now he's in season 2. We've obviously had a long history with him.
It's good to see they renewed his contract.
Yes.
We weren't sure if he was we had those contract disputes between season 1 and season 2, but we're good to see that he got those figured out and boom, right back on the pitch.
I'm just so excited to see his story arc through season 2.
Yeah.
I mean, season 1, big deal. Earl the Greyhound.
Yeah. He looks like a really, really good boy.
He does look like a good boy. Great CGI pigeon. Did you see this coming?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. When the pigeon, when you show the dog and they start doing this music and the pigeon, I was so afraid they were going to do what they did. I was hopeful that he was just going to hit the pigeon and not necessarily the dog. Yeah, this is a bold choice by Brendan Hunt to start out this season with murdering a beloved animal for the franchise.
More professional podcasts than us do this, so I'm going to do this. Trigger warning: if you have issues with dogs being killed by soccer balls, turn off the podcast.
Okay. Rewind a little bit.
So as the bird starts to fly, your natural inclination, I thought, was, he's going to smoke the bird. He's going to hit the bird.
Yeah.
Watching it with my spouse, she said, I'd already watched it. I got in trouble. I watched it a second time with my spouse. She said, he's going to hit the bird. Because in America, there's a pitcher named Randy Johnson who smoked a bird with a pitch. And it is a replay that everyone should watch once in their life and then
bird just explodes.
I think it's like a dove carrying an olive branch in its mouth. So she says, they're going to hit the bird. Nope, they do not hit the bird.
I feel like you didn't need... I mean, I don't know. We could spend an hour dissecting why they decided...
You don't think the dog needed to die by a soccer ball?
I don't. I think they could have killed the bird and you could have had Rojas be an animal or nature lover, and that could have been the same catalyst for him needing therapy and needing to do what he does throughout this episode. When they hit the dog, you don't need the audio of the dog. Also, I didn't like that. They could have
the
just
dog
cut.
yelping. You didn't like the dog yelping on camera.
Didn't like that. I'll listen. I'll go on record.
It's not your ringtone.
I'll go on record. I don't like dog murder.
Yeah. That's fair.
I don't like dog murder.
Hot take. Doesn't like dog murder,
especially in my comedies. I know this is a drama comedy, but man, was this a very harsh way to start a season.
This felt like, hey, in the first 5 minutes, we need to wreck the audience or bring the audience in. I don't know. It happens. The dog, unfortunately, we learned, does not make it through dialogue with Higgins, Keeley, and Rebecca walking down the hallway after the game.
I can't say. I think they kind of peppered it in that the dog was old and on his last legs, if you will.
So it was a mercy kill.
Yeah, exactly.
You're saying it's a mercy kill, so you're okay with it now.
I'm not saying I'm okay with it. I'm just saying I'm trying to give some context and make it better, but man, this was just...
I'm going to be the hot take ESPN guy, and I'm going to say, why is no one blaming the dog for them not getting their 1W? Because now they just got another tie. So that's my hot take.
Oh, wow.
The dog was the issue.
Wow. It's fair.
Then we are back with... and they do flash to the owner's box. So we see Keeley, Rebecca, Higgins... but then they're walking down the hall. Keeley now seems to be a part of the PR team, which we knew she was involved last season. Mm-hmm. Now she seems to be very much involved. and they realize that this clip is going to be all over the internet, which it 100% would.
Well, and Higgins is super excited, like, oh, we're in the lower league. They're not going to put it on TV. And he's like, the internet. It's like, oh no, the internet.
Yes.
Like, forgot of its existence.
Higgins might be incompetent, but he's great for a few jokes every now and then. This video 100% would be on E-Bomb's World. Do you remember E-Bomb's World from back in the day?
I do. Man, that's a pull.
You're welcome.
I don't know. Like, I mean, it would be a viral sensation, sad to say, but like, I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to keep dissecting the murder of an animal, but like, when a bird explodes, I don't know why, but I find that a little bit more palatable than a dog getting hit in the head.
I think that says more about you than the rest of us.
We'll
move on. Okay. All right. Trigger warning over. We're not going to talk about that dog being hit by the soccer ball anymore and his unfortunate demise.
Mm-hmm.
Until Trent Grimm brings it up in the next scene. So now we're at the press conference. Sam is apparently getting better. Sam Obasanya, they make a comment. Ted makes a comment about how great Sam is getting every game, and he's filling that Roy Kent hole phrasing.
The Roy Void.
The Roy Void. Very nice. Trent Grimm stands up. Trent Grimm of The Independent. Looking so great.
Can we agree? I feel like his hair, I didn't think it was possible. His hair is better than it was in season 1.
Listen, I'm going to be Trent Grimm for Halloween. I'm going to get a wig. I'm not going to look nearly as good, but I'm going to be Trent Grimm for Halloween, 100%.
Beautiful.
He asked the question that the people want to know, which is, any comments on Earl, the dog Dani Rojas killed today? I feel like there's a better way to phrase that question.
And Trent Grimm, man.
Yeah, Ted acknowledges it. He's like, really...
Oh, he brings the heat, man.
Brings the heat.
Trent Grimm brings the heat.
And then we get this moment where Ted, because Keeley was supposed to like write up a statement, and and Ted waved her off. He's like, I've got it.
Yeah.
So now he's asked about this dog. The music kicks in, and Ted tells the story about being attacked by a dog as a child, that he didn't like dogs after that, and then he had to take care of a neighbor's dog who was old, and then he liked the dog, and then he had to put the dog down. And he goes through this whole story, and the music plays, and we push in on Ted's face. And, like, it's a very, like, heartfelt moment, seemingly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to feel heartfelt based on the music and the camera work and everything. And then he says something like, I think these things come into our lives to get us to a better place. And I hope we helped Earl do just that. We're going to miss him a whole bunch. I did not understand this. I was like, wait, you helped Earl get to a better place by killing him?
Yeah, Ted is justifying puppy murder.
Like, was I wrong in this, though? Wasn't it like it was like, and like Trent Grimm gives him the, oh man, great Ted Lasso speech. I was like, wait, what happened here?
And there's that seemingly, the new reporter on the kind of the front row who has kind of the follow-up question about how Dani's doing. They seem to be kind of featuring her. Maybe she'll be more involved in the press room. But it was weird. It's like they were trying to justify this sequence to like be a catalyst for Dani's story in this episode and some of the other stuff. He kind of Ted makes mention of like, it's interesting how like you cry when you think about old moments, and then you think about it again and you cry because like the moments are gone. And
right.
Like, that's interesting. It's profound, but it just doesn't seemingly fit in this thing. And yeah, the idea of saying, I hope we helped Earl, like, man, like that's
we did not help Earl.
You did not help the dog.
I would argue you did the opposite for Earl.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I get with it. I mean, well, I don't know if I
tried to have an emotional moment.
Yeah.
And like let Ted do a press conference, which he's typically very good at.
Mm-hmm.
But I got done with the speech and I was like, wait, what? What just happened?
It felt forced.
Forced.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was forced.
Tom, you have a wave with words sometimes where you can just force them right in there.
Yep. May the force be with you.
Yeah. All right. That wasn't one of those moments, but that's fine. So then we go, she's like, the reporter, she's like, how's Dani doing? And great comedy from Sirius, as Ted Lasso does as a show. We cut to Dani in the shower, fully dressed, speaking in Spanish. I should have gotten Google Translate out.
Right.
I could only catch like Deus.
I think it's like Saint Maria or whatever.
Yeah. He's clearly praying, and the guys are lined up in the hallway staring at him. And great conversation. Colin's like, he's gonna use all the hot water, and that water pressure looked great, by the way.
Yeah, it was pretty solid.
And Ted tries to help. He tries to talk to Dani.
Yeah, he's like, use the soap for the eternal rest on those tough to reach places, which is odd.
Maybe not a great joking time, but yeah.
And Ted's advice, he kind of trying to help in this sequence. He tells him, hey man, don't forget, football is life, which I thought was interesting because that is like Ted's way to deal with this is trying to help and let him know, like, hey, stay positive. Football is life. That's kind of your motto that you're saying. And I think that kind of comes back a little bit later. So
yeah, and Dani is like, I'm washing the death off of me, which is so good. So football is apparently no longer life for Dani, but
no, it's rough. He's taking it hard.
Then we're in the locker room, and Ted gives the team a speech, calls them all goldfish, a callback to forgetting their mistakes, which is funny because this is explained to a new player who is apparently Dutch. His name is John Moss?
I don't think it's John. I guess Jan.
Jan Moss?
Jan
okay.
Moss.
And Jan Moss, I did not know this about Dutch people, but apparently Dutch people are very direct.
Yeah.
Did you look this up?
I 100% did.
Okay, yeah.
I literally typed this in. I'm like,
are Dutch people direct? Google. And there are like studies about how, and trigger warning for Dutch people, but it's apparently like they don't feel like they have to spare everyone's feelings, so they will just say what's on their mind. It sounds like everyone's, I don't know, mother-in-law or like that relative that makes, my mother-in-law is wonderful, by the way. On record, on this recording, my mother-in-law is wonderful. That was a general mother-in-law comment. Oh man, I may have to do some editing.
You know your mother-in-law listens, don't you?
I love you, Bonnie. All right, so.
Everybody's got a Dutch uncle.
Sure, a Dutch, thank you. Actually, I probably could have gone with father-in-law because he's not going to listen to this. Jan brings up that they're like, oh, you got to forget your mistakes. And he's like, well, I didn't play poorly. You played poorly. And he points that out to Colin, who's the one that made the mistake via the announcers, which I thought was interesting.
Nice. That's a good call. But I love the way Jan responds. He's like, I didn't make any mistakes. I played perfectly.
Oh, yeah. He's like a Jamie. He's like a Jamie, but a better Jamie.
Yeah, he's a Jamie, but he's not, like Sam mentions, like he's just being Dutch. He's not being a jerk, he's being Dutch.
And that's what's funny is like they've gotten to a point rather than being offended by it, Sam is kind of the guy that like the peacemaker. He's like, hey, he's not being rude, he's just being Dutch. And everyone's like, oh, okay. And they all like forgive him rather than everyone harboring resentment and being weird towards each other. So it is a much better like locker room situation. Sure. You can tell from when we had Jamie and Roy Kent to an extent, just from an anger perspective.
I'm definitely going to use that, though. We're going to insult people and just say, hey, I'm just being Dutch.
Just being Dutch. Are you Dutch, though?
I probably got like 1% or so.
We need you to do that like mouth swab thing and send it in.
23andMe.
Yeah.
We're sponsored by 23andMe this week.
Oh, yes. The issue is if you send it in, though, and you murder someone, they've got your DNA. So
it's true.
Not that I've ever murdered anyone, but I'm keeping that door open. That was maybe not a great joke. Trigger warning for people that don't like murder. And then we find ourselves with I misspelled Nate, Beard, and Ted in Ted's office. And Ted is complaining to them. He is so depressed about the karma that is happening here because in their last season game against Man City, he didn't want to tie, and then he really wanted to tie. And what we're finding out is they've had 7 straight ties. Is that right?
Yeah, they were like 7 straight ties, going for 8th to tie the tie that is tied between Swansea and whoever else. Arlo doing all that was great.
This is great. Let me ask you this. So you have explained to us, Americans, previously, that it's goals scored that count, right? So it's not necessarily ties and wins, it's just goals scored.
It's goal differential. So it's how many goals you score, also how many goals you give up.
So are they just getting zeros for all these games? Correct. Then? Because
even
if they score 2...
You get a point for a tie. 0 points for a loss, 1 point for a tie, and 3 points for a win. So the goal differential is a tiebreaker.
Oh.
Just a tiebreaker. Everything is based on points. If you tie with points at the end of the season, then you use that to determine.
So there's a chance they're doing well in the league. Yeah. Like they're scoring goals, but they're just tying every game. But like they're not playing the same team every day or every game.
At this point, if they're 7-8 games into the season and they've tied every game, they're going to be in the middle of the table. You're going to assume some of the teams have won, some of the teams have lost. If you've tied every game, at least you're getting a point every time. They're probably middle to bottom half of the table.
Okay, let me run this scenario by you.
Bring it.
So put your thinking cap on, because this is going to...
Let me get an orange. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Doesn't
Nope.
feel like an orange on a thinker's cap?
Never seen it, never read it.
Sorry.
All right, here we go. So...
I think you've done both.
Say Richmond, AFC Richmond,
yep,
the football club, scores 7 goals in their game.
Correct.
The other team also scores 7 goals.
Mm-hmm.
They tie.
Mm-hmm.
The next week, Richmond plays a different team. They
Mm-hmm.
score 7 goals.
Mm-hmm.
That team also scores 7 goals. And then they play another team in a week.
Yep.
They score 7 goals.
Okay.
That team scores 7 goals. Richmond has scored 21 goals.
Math checks out.
Those other teams on their other games have only scored maybe like 2 goals. Wait, none of this matters because goal differential is just for tiebreakers.
I was waiting for you to get to it.
Oh, man. Can I have my thinking cap back?
No, you may not. As you were going through this scenario, I'm like, do I need to define what goal differential means? But hey, you got there.
The answer to your question, Tom, is yes.
Yes, you sure do.
Oh, man. We discover that we have... Okay, so Ted is complaining about all the ties. He thinks it's karma, bringing us back to the whole superstition thing.
Yeah. Is karma, would you say karma and superstition are kind of interchangeable, I guess, to a layman?
Yeah, I'm not orthodox karma, so yes, I would say it's superstitious.
Okay.
Then we have a new kit man. His name is Will. He enters...
Kid boy, really. He's very young.
Okay. With that haircut, yes, he does look very young.
It's a Jamie season 1, episode 10
There's apparently
haircut.
no barbers in Richmond. Will asked to have the day off because it's his mom's birthday,
yep.
Who, according to Nate, does not play on the team, so doesn't deserve any recognition.
Yeah, Nate coming in hot.
Yeah.
Nate's like Trent Krim, man. He's coming in hot.
Nate treats him poorly, right? Or is Nate treating him in the right way?
I mean, that's debatable. Nate's, I think, treating him how Nate was treated maybe previously, and maybe it's kind of rubbing off a little bit, but Nate is definitely very, very harsh.
I guess we haven't seen enough. We haven't seen enough of that relationship, but they are painting it out to be that Nate is being, and there's other, we'll talk about it later on, where Nate is being a little bit of what the British would say, a prick.
A prick, okay.
And he makes some, what does he say? He's like, oh, you gotta pressure him or something.
Oh yeah, he's like, pressure makes pearls. He's like, oh wait, that's not right. It's diamonds. I screwed that up. Oh, I'm so sorry.
And then I thought to myself, I was like, well, what's happening inside those clams that makes pearls? Isn't that probably pressure too?
Oh boy, don't ask me those kind of questions.
You didn't research it?
Oh no.
Oh, you've got time for the Dutch, but no time for pearls, huh? Then we're at Rebecca's office. And this, I felt like, was a scene that they needed for, trailers, and they needed for, reestablishing that the main characters are, bonding. Because we have Rebecca, Higgins, Keeley is well established on that couch. And then Ted comes in. They're all having a cocktail.
Yeah.
I don't know, just the way it was, staged and the way it was shot, I was like, okay, this is, just establishing, hey, everyone's getting along and we all hang out in Rebecca's office now.
I think if we go back and rewatch season 2 trailer, I'm pretty sure him coming into the room and everybody screaming, Ted!
Okay.
I think that's literally in the trailer, so I think you're spot on.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
You're
spot
welcome.
On was my nickname in high school.
Don't explain why.
Higgins makes some comment about, we had a bunch of food delivered from one of our rivals. Did you catch this? I didn't catch it until the second watch.
The first time I heard it, he said, he's like, Tide. And he's like, oh, I just got it. But I thought it was Tide as in a bunch of detergent.
Okay. That's a different joke.
It's a different joke. I mean, I think it still gets to the same thing. But then when I put the subtitles on, I'm like, oh, Thai food.
Oh.
Okay.
You thought a Tide commercial had wiggled its way into a Ted Lasso episode?
Sure, why not?
Keeley, Rebecca, and Higgins are all having a cocktail. Ted comes in and he starts going into very quickly his rapid fire jokes, which I know you're a huge
you heard
fan
it, right? Sometimes if they do it too heavy or they do it too much, you kind of hear it and it kind of takes me out a little bit. I still think they're very funny, but it takes me out as often as they play it.
I felt I was like, you know what? I think Tom has ruined this for me because he brought this up and now we've ruined it for our millions of listeners.
Yep.
You're welcome.
15 million.
15 million divided by...
No, we're like the Roy's retirement speech. 15 million. We'll get to it.
15 million. Okay. we discovered that Higgins is going to watch The Empire Strike Back with his boys, and he makes some comment about how it's going to be awkward.
Yeah, with Leia and Luke kissing. This is interesting because this is the second Star Wars reference. Did you catch the first one?
Yeah,
is when Keeley said was I kind of setting it up, and he's like, "Oh, we got to write something," and Ted is like, "Oh, don't fret, Boba Fett." So it was interesting that they would do two Star Wars references in the same episode. Maybe
because it's not that common of a show or
I've
reference.
Never seen it.
I've never seen
I watched Phantom Menace, and that one was fantastic.
Oh,
didn't care for the other ones.
I liked the one with Khan. So then we get into girl talk, and I do find sometimes with the show, I would like to establish I do enjoy the show. That's the reason I'm sitting here talking with you.
We love the show.
But there are times where Ted gets into something and they treat him like he's not a human, like he's never experienced this situation before.
Yeah.
So he's now watching Girl Talk or listening to Girl Talk. We find out that Rebecca has a new suitor, and that Keeley and Rebecca are discussing it while Ted watches, and he is acting like he's never seen this happen before, which is fine. It's fine. And this opens us up to a double date with Roy and Keeley, and Rebecca and whoever this suitor is. We'll later find out his name is John, which is a great name. And we also discover that Roy is not coming to the games. Did you find this odd?
No, not necessarily. I feel like when Roy, we didn't know what Roy was going to do. Kind of starting into the season, and we knew he would still be around. Emmy-winning Roy Kent, or what's his name, Brett Goldstein. Would be around, but we didn't know in what capacity. So it doesn't surprise me. Like, to me, this made me think of Ricky Bobby, where he kept leaving the tickets for his dad that would never come.
And the dad would scalp him. Yeah. The dad would scalp him. I remember that scene. Oh, that's great.
So that's what it kind of made me think of. But
what I thought was interesting is I was like, oh, they play it like, oh, why wouldn't Roy be showing up too? But then I thought, personally, to have a job you're so intensely involved with, and then to be out of it, it would be tough to watch it and not think, oh, I could go back. I could do it again. Or I miss it. So I think it's almost maybe not, I mean, I would argue it's healthy. If he feels like he's going to go to the games and the whole time he's just going to be I should be there. I should be playing.
Yeah.
I can live the dream again. Maybe it is better to just clean break. But I don't think, I think he should talk to Ted at least. I found it surprising that they weren't seemingly communicating.
Yeah. I mean, I went to my niece's softball game this weekend, and I really wanted to get out there and take a couple hacks. I feel like I still got it.
Listen, every time I go to my son's football game, I'm like, I could throw this ball over that mountain.
I could take these kids.
If only Coach would have put me in, we would have won state. And by that, I mean if Coach knew I existed, because I wasn't on the team in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, man, you kept that bench super warm.
Oh, super warm. And we find out, what is Roy doing in his retirement, Tom?
I love the way it cuts, too. It cuts to Roy just screaming.
Bearded Roy.
Yeah.
He didn't have a beard before, right?
He had stubble.
Okay.
This is more of a legit beard.
This is a retirement beard.
Yes.
Or a quarantine beard.
Yeah. But he's just screaming, and I knew it before they even cut. Oh, he's definitely screaming at kids. And then it cuts to him coaching Phoebe's under-9 soccer team.
It's like they took a poll and they were like, hey, what about this show do you like the most? And everyone was like, oh, we love when Roy screams at children. Yeah. And they're like, all right, we'll start out the season with that.
So you can't call them pricks. Even if they're being pricks, you can't call them pricks.
Yeah, that's a great moment. So Roy is coaching Phoebe's team. Great moment. He's like, none of you put out any effort except for you. And there's a girl with an ice pack on her head, and she's all in. She's like, yes, Coach, I'd do it again.
It's a Roy in the making for sure.
Oh, she's great. And then Keeley shows up. Just a funny bit here. She's like, hey, who wants hot chocolate? And Roy raises his hand, very it's just almost robotic. Yeah. He's like, I do. Just a funny, I don't know. As an actor, that's a choice he made, but just that was very funny to me. So then we're having hot chocolate on a bench next to, I can only assume, is the Thames. How hard is it to put liquid in a prop cup, Tom? Have you ever noticed this when you're watching shows?
How they drink, and they drink so quickly, and they put it up and down.
There's clearly no liquid in those cups, or they set it down, and you can clearly hear the hollow.
Yeah.
Because those those styrofoam or foam paper coffee cup,
Yeah.
they like make a noise.
Yeah.
And like there's just something the way a cup with liquid moves and one that doesn't, and it drives me crazy. Just put water in it.
Yeah.
Like I know they've got to do a bunch of cuts. They don't want to have a bunch of like hot chocolate or whatever.
Like my only thought is like, okay, you don't want your actors having to constantly go to the bathroom if they're drinking water. But I would also argue you could just put the water up.
They act.
But you could put the water up to your lips and not actually drink it and have it come back down. Like it's one thing if you're drinking like a beer in a scene, like in a glass, because you can see the glass go up and down. That's challenging to keep it at the same level. But I 100% agree with you. It is a weird trope.
They can put a cup with water to their lips and not have any liquid enter their mouth. I feel like there's an interview with like Marlon Brando, and he's like, the only thing I couldn't do as an actor is I couldn't fake drink, so I had to drink every time. It's like, just put liquid in the cup. Drives me crazy. I would encourage everyone that listens to us, anytime you watch a show where someone has some sort of cup in their hand, think, is there liquid in that cup? 9 times out of 10, no liquid in that cup.
9 times out of 10, you can answer yes or no because apparently they cannot act appropriately with empty cups.
All right, I'll get off my water cup box or whatever the heck I'm on right now. We find out that Phoebe is keeping a swear tab for Roy, which is brilliant if she wants to go to college and have someone else pay for it. We find that Roy is excited to double date with Rebecca and whoever this guy is.
Not so much.
What would you say Roy enjoys in life? If you could name the top 3 things.
Yoga with middle-aged women.
Okay.
Cursing at children.
Sure. Cursing in general.
Yep. And hating Jamie Jordan.
I think you nailed it.
I would assume we only saw him in his egg socks, but I'm assuming he has an affinity for all breakfast-related food socks.
Okay.
He probably gets some bacon socks.
That's a great callback.
Some hash brown socks.
I would say runner-up is leather jackets, but
yeah. Have we confirmed he has leather jackets, or is this just his body hair?
No, it's leather jackets.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
No, I Googled it. I have one ordered. It's coming in. We find out that he has been approached to be a football pundit, which he has some strong feelings about. Great rant from Roy on what his thoughts are on being a pundit. And I was like, you want Roy not to just like not do anything in retirement.
Mm.
And so, I don't know, part of you is like, oh yeah, he should be a pundit. And then I thought, would Roy be a good pundit? And does Britain have an FCC, which he would get fined for swearing on camera every time?
So like Sky Sports that they recommend, I think that's more or less like the English version or American version of like ESPN.
ESPN, I'm familiar.
ESPN, yes. I looked this up. I'm like, because I know in general, like British and English TV, like they're more open with cursing, I think, and like sexuality on TV. So I looked that up. Like, do they curse on Sky Sports? And they do not. Like the first thing I found was like Sky Sports recently sued for having commentator curse on air. Or whatever.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, I don't see him as a good pundit. Like he's obviously funny and entertaining, but not in the way like a pundit probably should be. And he's knowledgeable of the game clearly, but yeah, that didn't make sense. It makes sense from a writing perspective that you would just say, oh, he's a retired player or a sports star, so he should just go commentate. But
can you think of a modern day, and we can cut in some time here for you to give it some thought, but can you think of a modern day athlete that putting them as a pundit, you would be like, oh no, or like the equivalent to a Roy, like say like a Aqib Talib or something along those lines?
Aqib Talib, yeah, he's pretty awful. I would maybe say a Eli Manning, also pretty awful.
Eli Manning's fine. He gave 2 middle fingers to everyone on Monday night. That was great.
I did not know that.
Oh, you didn't know? That was out. Oh, good for you. Yeah, go look it up. He got some flack for it.
I just feel like Peyton is like the more, because the Peyton and Eli are doing these Monday Night Football gigs where they're kind of commentating on it very awkwardly. That's just kind of more like a podcast style. They're just watching the game and just shooting the stuff while they're watching. Eli just doesn't seem to be the personality that Peyton is, but
sure.
I don't know. Do you have one in mind?
I don't. We did just lose a lot of our audience talking about American football, but
they can get a little bit of it.
I'm sure you guys know who the Manning brothers are. We find that Keely didn't force Roy, but gave him the idea of doing a retirement press conference.
Yeah.
Which I hope they filmed. I hope they play it.
I was going to ask you, do you think they're going to show it? They had mentioned it multiple times this episode about how impactful and great this press conference retirement speech was.
I don't think they will, but I want them to. I think this is one of those things where if they showed it, we'd be disappointed. Yeah. It would not. But if you talk about it in absentia, then is that the right word?
I was going to go.
Okay.
Schadenfreude, bro.
And she makes a great point. She's like, 15 million people watch that. And he's like, oh, so
15 million people watching my the thing that I hated doing.
Right.
That makes it supposed to make me feel better. She's like, yeah, that's a fair point.
15 million people watching me be a knob, as he says it. And then we find out how much money Phoebe is owed from Roy for all of his swearing. And what is the number?
It's $12.36. Does this have a?
We'll get to it later, Tom.
Okay. 1,236 pounds owed to. I love the way that Roy did this rant because he had seemingly 30 curse words in this rant that he did, and he's out of breath by the time he gets to this last curse word, which I thought is great. He had to get it out, but he was out of breath saying it.
Yeah. You're saying when he didn't want to be a pundit?
Yeah, it
was great. Then we find ourselves back in what seems to be another game, but we find out it's Dani Rojas' dream. There's a cartoon dog as the goalkeeper.
He's a good boy.
He immediately puts the ball into that cartoon dog's face, wakes up and screams, "Football is death." Did you notice who Dani Rojas was with in that bed?
I love this, a throwaway thing. I mean, you can blink and you miss it kind of thing, but there's just two seemingly very attractive women on each side of his bed as he wakes up.
Listen, I cannot imagine sleeping in that situation. What if you have to get up? You're pinned in. It's no good. It's no good, Tom.
Yeah, okay. I have different thoughts about that situation.
There's children that listen to this, Thomas.
That's fine.
All right. So then we're at Biscuits with the Boss, and Ted is allowed, once again, Ted is acting like he's never been in this situation before.
Well, I mean, he's a guy. He probably doesn't get involved in girl talk very often, or as we soon find out, it's girl listen.
You've never had to sit. Anyways, I'm not going to get into it, but since Keeley's not there, Ted is a stand-in for Keeley for girl talk. We find out that the suitor's name is
John Wings Night.
And what is your favorite night of the week, Tom?
Wings Night.
Which is typically?
Wednesday.
Thursday.
Is it Thursdays?
I don't know. Tuesdays, actually.
What did he say? JP, JK, something or other?
J-Dub something. Yeah. I don't know.
JK Simmons restaurant.
So he makes fun of the guy's last name. Ted will not stop. Ted is relentless in his firing of jokes. And this was the first moment I was like, oh, I understand why Michelle wanted that divorce badly.
Yes, see?
So badly.
See, I had points that I made. It can be too much.
Hey, does everything have to be a joke?
Yes.
No, I love Ted. I would be married to him. I would sleep in that bed forever. I was once told by someone, this is getting to the girl talk.
Okay.
I was once told by sometime, and I've held on to this, and I have not followed it. I've done this very poorly. But a lot of times people tell you their problems not to solve them, but just because they would like to express them. Yeah. They're sharing. And I think this is very good knowledge for, let's say, men. Yeah. Because as a dude, our typical mindset is, you've told me a problem, I'm going to tell you how to solve it.
Yeah.
And that person probably knows how to solve it, but what they're doing is just expressing.
Yeah, they're venting. They want a soundboard, and yeah, for sure. The last thing I want to hear is just somebody just telling them, "Oh, it's just simple. Just do this, this, and this, and boom, all your problems are solved."
Exactly. So, as Ted was having this conversation with Rebecca, that's what I thought about. Sometimes it's just listen, let them vent. You don't need to give them advice. You don't need to tell them how to solve it. So that's where my mind went. You can write that advice down or send it to the White House. It doesn't matter. Then we're back training on the pitch. And what can't Dani do, Tom?
Dani cannot, seemingly not only can he not make a penalty kick, but he just can't kick at all. Try to give a corner, he can't kick.
He can't keep his feet. Like, he kicks the ball and falls down.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Dani can't make a kick. Jan?
Let's say Jan.
Jan the Dutchman says he's awesome. He goes, "Wow, it's like we're watching the end of someone's career."
He's just being honest.
And Sam's like, "Not now."
Yeah, Sam's responds right away.
And then we have this weird walk and talk. I felt it was weird. Did you feel it was weird? It was this weird, like, walk and talk of Ted in his aviators, walking with Dani, beard trailing. And I was like, what does this remind me of? It was like either a callback to something. I know we like to make fun of, like, the Sorkin walk and talk.
Yep.
But it was, I don't know. I was like, what are they doing right now?
Did you have something specific it reminded you of?
It didn't, no.
Okay. Because when you said, like, does it remind you of something, like, my mind goes to, like, Caddyshack, when, like, Dani, the caddy, is walking down after Chevy Chase kind of hits his drive. They're kind of walking down. They're kind of doing the same thing, a little walk and talk. Chevy Chase, like, Dani, the caddy's looking for career or life advice. Like, hey, what do you do next? Or what do you do next in your life? Chevy Chase is like, I don't really know. Do you take drugs? He responds, oh, yes, every day. He's like, well, then what's the problem?
I've never seen Caddyshack, Tom.
Oh, man. That's got hopefully a lie.
It's not a lie.
Oh my
They
gosh.
have a moment where they're talking about Tom Cruise and tiny ponytails. We have a joke about Magnolia, which I've also never seen. Another 80s comedy classic, I'm assuming.
Is it a comedy?
Right up there with Caddyshack. And then The Last Samurai, which I did see. I did see The Last Samurai, and I probably should see those two other movies before watching Last Samurai again.
Last Samurai is a fantastic film.
Okay. A lot of small ponytail stuff.
A lot of cultural appropriation, but fun movie.
Ted gives Dani a speech, expecting him to snap out of his funk. In order to get him out of his funk, he wants to do corner kicks, and he calls for
the Midnight Poutine.
The Midnight Poutine, which, did you remember this was a trick play that they had brought up?
It was Zorro's recommendation.
And Beard was like, not dirty, but very Canadian? Or very French?
Oh, well, maybe it is. We'll call it French Canadian.
Okay. Do you know what poutine is?
I don't know. It's like a food?
It is a food, Tom. Good answer. Dani then kicks
Wait, do you want to elaborate? What is it?
No, you answered the question.
Okay.
Poutine is a food. Boom. We move on. That's how this works.
Okay.
Dani then kicks the ball into Ted, which you can just see it. Like, as the setup's going, they 100%. Telegraph it.
I assumed it would have hit Ted's face, though. He got him just kind of right in the butt.
Oh, you wanted him to get hit in the head just like Earl the Greyhound.
I assumed that was what they were doing.
Murder. So then so clearly we've established that Rojas isn't getting better despite Ted's best efforts about talking about Tom Cruise. Then we're with the Diamond Dogs back in Ted's office. Ted is like talking about not being able to help Dani. He's stumped. And Nate has this great line, which, once again, part of me really relates to Nate in this episode. He goes, if Dani needs motivation, we could always show him his GD paycheck, which is great. But everyone looks at Nate like he's being a little bit harsh. But when you're probably being paid millions of dollars to play a game, maybe that is the motivation you need. Hey, we're paying you to do this.
Yeah, Nate and Keeley are probably on the same page here.
Yeah. Wait, Nate and Keeley?
Yeah, because Keeley's like, oh, I get paid all this money to play a game.
Oh, yeah. No. Good callback. So I am appreciating the aggressive version of Nate, is what I'm bringing up. And then Beard writes something on the board. What does he write up on the board that he thinks is Rojas's issue?
I don't know. Should I say it out loud?
You should say it out loud.
He writes the yips.
The yips. Had you heard this phrase before, Tom?
Oh, 100%. When I hear the yips, I think like golf. I thought they would mention. Well, they kind of mentioned golf in Charles Barkley.
Sure.
Charles Barkley playing golf.
I'm sorry. It's a British show. Sir Charles Barkley.
Okay, yeah. When Sir Charles Barkley is playing golf poorly, to say he has the yips, that's doing a disservice to the phrase the yips.
It's doing disservice to golf.
Yeah.
And one, Charles Barkley's a basketball player. Yeah. So he didn't get yips playing basketball. He's just a poor...
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Like, to me, the yips is like, golfers get this. Like, where they seemingly, like, they keep slicing the ball, or they keep topping the ball, or something like that. And it's just because like they just like Beard mentions, like they can't do what like the basic fundamentals of a sport that they clearly know how to play very, very well at a high level.
Right. Now, I'd heard of the yips, but the whole, like, you're not supposed to say it out loud, I'd never really heard. The not say it out loud, I more associate with someone, like, pitching a perfect game.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to talk about that. If a pitcher's on fire, like, you don't bring it up, you don't jinx it. But had you heard that about the yips? Like, you're not supposed to say it out loud?
Yeah.
You're just supposed to ignore someone playing poorly?
Well, I think the idea is you ignore it when it first starts to happen, because the second you mention yips to somebody that's kind of starting to have them, then it gets in their head and it doesn't make it any better. It makes the problem worse.
Is it called the yips because that's the sound a dog makes when a soccer ball hits it in the head?
Oh, God, I hope not.
You're welcome.
I think it's just like, yip. Like, I don't know, you throw the ball, gone. It's like, yips.
One of Ted's, not Tom's, one of Ted's like jokes is, or not like joke, but he says, you're not supposed to say the yips out loud like Macbeth in a theater, or Voldemort at Hogwarts, or soccer in England, which was a great line. Higgins brings up, what do you think about therapy, Ted? And Ted's line is, he's like, how do you feel about therapy? And he goes, well, I have a general apprehension and a modest Midwestern skepticism, which I know what a modern Midwestern skepticism is. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
Much like Congress and pornography. Like when he said that, a modest Midwestern skepticism, I was like, oh yeah. I've got it. That's great. Ted is clearly against this. He does the whole, they're like, what do you think? He asks everyone else in the room. Everyone else the Diamond Dogs are on board.
Yep.
And then he does the whole...
Yeah, you kind of come across the room. You get to first place. You got our first base. Beard is on board.
Baseball
you go
analogies.
to Higgins.
Oh,
it's
wow.
a diamond, man. And you
Sure.
get to Higgins, and Higgins kind of giving his nod. And then you get to third base. We're rounding the plate. You get Nate also giving the heads up. You get to home plate, and Ted just does some very, very brilliant acting.
He's great.
With his little shaking of the head. And then when he eventually says yes, he's shaking his head no.
No, right. That's a difficult thing to do. I don't know if you've ever said yes to something while shaking your head no. It's very difficult. Very nice.
I think I did it wrong.
Then we find ourselves on the double date with John Wings Night, Rebecca, Keeley, and Roy. And John is telling a story about almost beating up Martin Short, which is funny. And the only reason Martin Short is like in my current world is because I'm watching that Only Murders in the Building show, which he's in. And, love Martin Short. He was great on Arrested Development. I don't hate John. I don't know if we're supposed to dislike John or if we're just supposed to think he's fine during this. Did you like John? Did you care for John?
No, I think exactly what Roy says here in a bit. Like he's fine. He's not bad. He's not like he's fine. He's just like he's giving these little anecdotes in here, which is probably a guy on a date trying to impress his date.
He's name dropping, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Which no one really enjoys, but he also brings up that he is mad about football, which was a great ABC show with Paul Reiser and I don't remember her name.
Bonnie Hunt.
Sure. And that's not her name.
Isn't it?
Is it?
No, Bonnie Hunt's her sister, Helen Hunt. Wow, I went to her sister first.
I don't think we're right on either of those.
I am 100% right. It's Helen Hunt is the main actress in Mad About You, and Bonnie Hunt is her sister.
And they were mad about football. Roy says the phrase, oh, who do you support? Is that a common, like, who are you a fan of? Who do you support? Is that how they ask?
Yeah, like when you, like, fans in America, it's supporters in England.
Okay. So he says he supports whatever club is winning, Manchester City and Manchester United. I have got to think that that's like, oh, I'm a Yankees fan or I'm a Red Sox fan, depending on who's winning. Is that like the equivalent?
I mean, I would maybe go like New York Giants versus New York Jets, like because they have to be like literally in the same place.
Damn, no one's ever a Jets fan.
Yeah, as Beard mentions a little bit later, because like Manchester City, Manchester United, like they're both in the city of Manchester, so I think it's that kind of deal. Like Boston and New York, I think has a different dynamic. But I think this is the show kind of like giving Roy that runway of kind of saying, yeah, he's fine, like a guy that's going to flip
he's not self-aware enough to know that saying that makes him a knob.
Yeah.
Which even as a American, clearly an American, I know when someone says that, I'm like, oh, they're trying to make this guy a knob.
Yeah. And at that point, you can't say he's a mad football fan. Like, maybe you enjoy the game, but you're clearly not a good supporter.
Right. And then John says something to Roy. We've already established Roy's not interested in talking about his retirement speech. And John says, your retirement speech was amazing. It's the first email my father has forwarded to me in the last 5 years that wasn't about the scourge of immigration. Which is great. It reminds me of when Roy's like, yeah, my dad's in his 60s and is from South London. Of course he's a little bit racist.
Oh, yeah, that's great. It's a good callback there. I didn't recognize that.
And then Keeley brings up, which I don't think I really appreciated, because it's just not something like as a couple you want to bring out into the open in a situation like this. And she apologizes for it later, but she really brings up, she's like, oh, he's got an offer to be a pundit, which he's already expressed how much he doesn't want to do.
Yeah. I think Keeley's just trying to get, like, allow Roy to see other people's opinions. Like, Rebecca would be on board with it, or seemingly this random fan was like, yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, I don't think Roy's going to give two poops about John's opinion. Maybe Rebecca's, but not John's. And this whole time, Roy is harassing waiters.
Yeah, why won't people give Roy a drink?
I don't know.
He tried multiple times. They had to eventually grab, which was very aggressive. He had to grab this waiter's arm, which I think was a little much. But yeah, I don't know why they weren't giving Roy a drink.
I feel like Roy's the guy that gets 2 drinks in him, and he's probably punching waiters. So maybe the waiters know.
Listen, man, if you got to have a double date with this John character, I don't know, I might be drinking too.
And it's not on Wings night?
Yeah.
I thought John was fine. I didn't have any issue with John.
Hey, listen, so does Roy. Roy thinks he's fine as well.
Roy does think he's fine. Super fine. So then we find ourselves at the pub with Ted and Beard. Start off by remembering the dog?
Yeah, I think, they sit down, they kind of do a little remembrance. They give a cheers. They do what they did on the bench in the first season, where they cheers each other, they clink their drinks, and then they pop them on the table to kind of cheers everybody else that's not there. So it's a good little call.
Very cool visual. And there's some great rhyming. I didn't write it down. I should have.
That's good.
But he's like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Forget about my meal for... I can't rhyme minute with minute, but...
it was good.
It was great.
I didn't write it down either.
And then we go into Ted starts to talk about, hey, if I can be honest, I have issues with bringing a therapist in to try and solve Rojas's problems. They bring up the Gin Blossoms.
Yeah, which is a local Arizona band where we record this podcast. So that was kind of a fun little nod.
I am well aware. If you've never listened to the Gin Blossoms, they're a very good time. Beard brings up, hey, jealousy, also follow you down.
What's your favorite?
I don't think my favorite is either of those, but I couldn't name my favorite. I know I heard those and I was like, oh, those are good, but like that whole album's great. The one that those come from.
Okay, I don't know.
Golly, I hope they don't come from different albums. I'm going to look like a real knob.
Nah, you're good. I'd go follow you down. That's probably my fave.
Which one plays when Matthew McConaughey is chasing down Kate Hudson in 10 Ways to Lose a Guy?
You're asking the wrong guy, and I don't think that's the name of the movie.
10 Reasons to Hate a Guy in New York, I think it's called.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Not 10 Things I Hate About You. No. How to Lose a Guy
in 10 Days?
In 10 Days.
Failure to Launch?
No, not Failure to Launch, although Matty McConaughey is in all those.
All right.
Oh. Good for you. We find out that Ted does not trust therapists, and he does not trust therapists because when him and Michelle went to see a therapist, he felt like he was just being set up by someone who was going to tell him all the things that were wrong. The therapist was, if you'll recall, is the one that suggested they get distance from each other, and now they're divorced. So I'm with Ted on this. All therapists are bad.
I think it's a fair assumption from Ted's perspective, but it certainly doesn't align with Ted's kind of motto about, like what Beard eventually mentions here about, all people are different people. So being curious and not necessarily judging people or putting all therapists in a bubble and saying they're all the exact same is not what we've seen from Ted. So it's interesting that he goes there, but it is understandable that his mind goes there.
Good point. Way to bring back the be curious, not judgmental. I did like it. And Beard's example to him is, do you remember what you said when I said I would not date that cruise dancer. I'd not date another dancer from a cruise line or whatever it is.
And he ends the scene by like taking his drink. He's like, it's like, oh, you still dating dancers? He's like, yeah, I'm still dating dancers. Too many.
Too many.
I'm not sure what he's implying there, but it is comical.
Be a tough gig dating someone on a cruise line. They're gone a lot.
Well, but he said specifically dancers. Cruise dancers, yeah, I would imagine it'd be difficult. But he says too many dancers.
Maybe he goes on a lot of cruises.
Maybe exotic dancers. We don't know.
Then good point. Good point. Then we find ourselves at the end of the double date. John and Rebecca do their good night. Then Rebecca goes back to essentially Keely and Roy for some sort of approval. John understands, like, hey, I'm meeting your friends to see if they give the seal of approval. Keely says he's a good match. She says he's a good match. Why, Tom?
Yeah, she's age appropriate. She's financially appropriate. Like, he's a good match. Like, what was your thoughts on that? Like, is she kind of like implying like you need to be in the same financial tax brackets?
I think she's protective of her rich friend, that he is not someone that is just like liking her for her money.
Okay.
So if they are at the same financial level, then, he obviously has some other reasons for being into Rebecca as opposed to just.
And they kind of do that very wisely in the show. Like, they have him get in his car when he leaves, and they have him get in like the back seat of his car. It's like a Bentley or something, and the guy opens up the car door for him to go in the back, which kind of tells you, okay, this guy's not driving a Toyota or whatever down the road. Right. He's certainly well off. But I just thought that was kind of weird the way they put that. But the way you said that, I think that certainly makes sense.
I was waiting for them to cut back and him to like get out of the back seat and then move to the front seat, and us be like, oh,
he's got like a Nate style car
to drive. And then he gets in on the left side, and we're like, oh, he's an American too. Roy has some strong opinions about this gentleman.
He sure does.
His opinions are pretty close to mine. He thinks John's fine. And he says, you deserve someone who feels like you've been struck by lightning. Don't settle for fine.
Mm-hmm. Not that it's any of my business.
Not that it's any of my business. He very strongly feels, don't settle for fine. And I thought to myself, is this true? I mean, what's wrong with like steady, reliable, no drama? I'm not saying you don't have to like dream or like be like romantically swept off your feet, but I don't feel like they're giving this guy much of a chance. That they're, I don't know. Did he not do enough like magic tricks? Did he not like? I don't know what Roy is looking for. That this guy is just like fine. Like maybe she needs just like steady and reliable.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think that's fair. I think you're going to get in trouble probably with your wife for just saying that. You would just settle.
No. My argument is like, maybe my wife listens to this and she's like, oh yeah, I wasn't struck by lightning. And so like, I want her to realize that like steady, reliable,
you're coming from your
average, like maybe he naps a lot on Sundays. Maybe he doesn't, do all of the chores that she wants him to do.
No, I think Roy's certainly taking a more like realistic approach to like I imagine just kind of dating in general. Like, it doesn't have to be like there's a massive spark. Like, I feel like movies do this.
Struck by bleeping lightning.
He
Tom.
Does. But like movies and TV, they do this so much. Where like people get swept off their feet, and it's all fairy tales and that kind of stuff. And it like
I feel like that's what he's arguing for.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I think that he's being more realistic in this, which I think is a fair point. Like, it's not always knight in shining armor kind of situations.
Right. It should just be two average, boring people signing a document that says they're going to live together until they die. And then they die. Like, that's what it is.
And then they get hit by a soccer ball.
And then they get hit in the face by a soccer ball. Say one thing about Logan Nine Fingers, Tom. You got to be realistic. You got to be realistic about love.
I love it, man. Good call.
All right, then we find ourselves back in Ted's office with Nate and Beard. They are playing a game of paper ball, which seemed super fun. Seems like a game you have played a lot in your life. Maybe not with another person, but alone, just hitting the ball back and forth.
I don't know if I have. Like, I've like laid on my back and like throw a football up and down a bunch of times, but actually like patting a paper ball, and like their record is very impressive. That seems like a lot to hit the ball back and forth without it falling.
It is a lot. The game that I find myself playing when I'm with a group of people that are super bored is how close can we throw a rock to that other rock? Have you ever played this game?
I guess I have.
Let's just say I've spent some time with people in like desert environments and you're bored out of your mind and you're like, oh, you see that rock? Let's see who can throw closest to that rock.
Well, not like a tree. I guess we live in a desert, so we have less trees.
Yes, desert specific. So then we find ourselves introduced to the sports therapist that's going to join the team. Her name is Dr. Sharon Fieldstone.
It's a great psychiatrist.
It is a great name. Played by Sarah Niles. Ted decides I don't know if this is nerves or what, but he does a greeting song. How did you feel about this greeting song, Tom?
It was weird. Like when
bizarre? Would you describe it as bizarre?
Bizarre is a fantastic word for it. When he first stood up and like started doing this little dance sequence, I'm like, oh, okay, this is just Ted being silly and trying to break the ice, whatever, with her. But then when like Nate and Beard seemingly like jump in and like they're all part of it, and they kind of end the dance by like clapping at the same time or kind of closing it out. Seemingly they've done this multiple times to other people.
Every time they meet a new person in that office, they've done this song.
This is their shtick.
So then we have the trope of the humorless lady doctor who shows up. She starts asking Ted questions, and she does not care about saying the yips out loud.
Yeah, and then Ted more or less is just explaining like what superstition is, because she's like, oh, the yips, like, oh, this is the second weird thing that you guys have done. Like, tell me about it. And Ted has to explain why that's an issue and why they are superstitious.
So then Higgins gives up his office because she's like, oh, where should I hold my sessions? Higgins gives up his office, which I don't know if that's Higgins just not wanting to work or what, but he gives up his office. It's very funny. She asks them what the paper ball record is, and the record is
1236?
1,236, which is a callback to
Roy's cursing amount that he owes Phoebe.
Roy's cursing amount.
Why in the heck's name did they tie those
They used
together?
the same number. I'm going to tell you a story, Tom. I Googled this.
Okay.
I was like, hey, why is this number important to Ted Lasso? I find myself on a website called Reddit.
Reddite.
Okay. I believe it's French. And someone was like, oh, it's because that's how much money was like negative in Jason Sudeikis' balance when he got picked up for SNL. And it's like, here's the source. And so I clicked on the source. I was like, oh, that's an interesting story.
Oh, we just click on a random link on Reddit.
Tom, do you know what Rickrolling is?
Oh, you got Rickrolled?
Got Rickrolled, Tom. Rickrolled is...
it's when you seemingly get told to do one thing, you assume you're going to learn something, and lo and behold, here comes Rick Astley just saying, never going to give you up, right to your face. And it is a little music video, classic 80s music video.
Yeah, no, I'm not proud. I'm not proud, nor am I happy. But that's what happened to me.
So you got Rickrolled by the internet.
Got Rickrolled by the internet. First time.
Won't be the last.
Every time I would watch that video, it would be on purpose for me. But this time, involuntary, without consent.
So there's nothing else to it. Did you look anymore? Or you're just like, I got Rickrolled. I'm dead.
Yeah, I was gunshot. Let's say I was internet gunshot.
So we don't know if this $1,236 is actually what Sudeikis had in his bank account.
We
speculate.
We don't know. We're gonna assume it's accurate.
Okay, fair.
She leaves. Dr. Sharon Fieldstone leaves, and Beard's delivery of "She seems fun" was so good.
As he watches her kind of leave, make sure she can't hear.
And the whole thing during that scene is like they're trying to make jokes and like do things, and she just seems very like straight laced, humorless, and
maybe Ted's like gonna rub off on her. Maybe she'll be more comical moving forward. I mean, it's odd that she would just be so like stone faced during all of this. She figured she should be polite and giggle.
Yeah, we all polite laugh at people's jokes. You do it during this podcast.
Right
there you go. And I guess my thought was that You're welcome.
That's another sport giggle.
We no longer have Rebecca as a foil. So, like, we need to bring someone in as a foil. Yeah. So my thought is maybe she is, the conflict in the show. Because as much as I would love to watch a well-oiled AFC Richmond, Ted Lasso, like, them just getting along, TV shows need conflict. Yeah. So they brought her in for conflict.
Yeah.
So then Dani Rojas has a session with her. She is moving in on Ted's emotional support turf, is what I took, because he brings Rojas up and he's like, hey, do you want me to stick around? She's like, no.
Yeah.
She ushers him out.
No, it's a good call out, too, because like I think when I was watching this, I always just thought this is just Ted's distrust in therapists and therapy. So that's why he's upset, why this is working. But like, I think it is deeper than that. I think it's he's seeing his philosophy is not like all encompassing. Like it's not going to solve every situation like it seemingly did in season 1. He can't just tell Dani, hey, be less like Tom Cruise with a ponytail and you're going to be good to go. So I thought it was a very interesting dynamic, and I'm very interested to see where they take it during this season. I'm assuming she's going to be a promising character.
Right. And as you've pointed out, like, Ted is not like the technical soccer guru. Yeah. So, like, as a coach, all he's got is the emotional support, like the motivation side.
Yep.
He's the player's coach. Yeah. He's not like the technician. So then we're at lunch with John and Rebecca. She says something after looking at all the people in the cafe. She's like, oh, I need to be brave enough to let someone wonderful love me. I need to be vulnerable without fear of being safe. And she goes into all this. And John's like, oh, you're breaking up with me. And I was like, how'd you get that out of that weird diatribe she's gone on? I was confused, but I'm me, and I get confused very often.
It was a weird diatribe for her to go in. She was seemingly like zoning out. Like she almost didn't realize he was still there, and just kind of stream of consciousness just kind of spat all this out. It was very nice of her at the end to say, hey, I'll buy your coffee.
Oh, did she offer that?
Yeah, she's like, I'll get the coffee.
All I know is that every conversation with these people ends with cheers, so it just seems like a fun time. I like John. I hope he stays around for the rest of the season. Then we find ourselves back at training. Dani Rojas comes in and he asks the coaches, may I join the drill?
He comes back and like how we first were introduced to Dani Rojas. He's like, Dani Rojas, Dani Rojas.
Football is life. He's rejuvenated.
Yep.
The doctor is watching from the stands. There's this funny moment where Ted waves at her. She doesn't wave back. Ted's like, oh, she probably didn't see me. And she saw you.
She saw you.
It's like when Roy called Ted like Ronald McDonald or something, or Duck, and he turned to B and he's like, are you going to let him call you that? But he's like, I don't think he was talking to me. And Dani makes his corner kick. Tom, how difficult is it to make a corner kick?
I mean, it's definitely not an easy shot, but with the amount of like bend and curve players can put on the ball, it's not unheard of. I think what's more unheard of is the lousy defending and goalkeeping that's going on in this sequence.
You don't feel like the goalkeeper should be back there in that corner to protect?
Sometimes goalkeeping can get difficult on corner kicks because if you got so many guys in the box, like you can't take that step back, you can't get a good jump. So, I mean, it's fair, but yeah, all these guys are, maybe they're playing it up a little bit. Maybe they're letting Danny's ball go through to be able to give him that. But it was an incredible kick for sure.
Sure. So very quickly we discover that Dani is cured. Whatever was wrong with him, cured. Made a corner kick.
The assumption is she's doping him, right?
Yes. Yes. She has decided that he needs performance-enhancing drugs. She has a syringe. She's given him that syringe, and now he's just kicking 1,000.
Football's life.
Football is life.
So steroids.
Dani tells the coaches that Dr. Sharon's incredible. Ted's like, hey, what did she do? And he's like, well, she told me that football's life. Football is also death. Football is football.
But mostly football is life.
Mostly football is life.
I think she just gave Dani perspective on, like, yes, football is life. It's a part of your life. But so, like, death is also a part of life. Football is, like, just kind of, like, more or less dissecting Dani's kind of, phrase of football.
I didn't read into it much. My thought was just, okay, Ted is going to feel insecure about this because someone else has solved a problem.
Yep.
And during this exchange, Beard is reading a book.
Yeah. He's reading The Greatness, which is the underscore is the quest for sporting perfection by Matthew Syed, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Sure, yeah. Matt Syed.
Sure, yeah. Well, friends call him Matty, but
Sure. It's a Christian name.
But I just love it. It's kind of a throwaway thing, and it's just Beard trying to do more of what he does. Is how do I become the perfect coach?
Sure. And then Ted's like, oh, I'm gonna go say, thank you to Dr. Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
Beard's like, oh, it's the least you can do. He gets up there. She's in session. Out comes our boy Colin in what might be the fluffiest vest that anyone's ever worn.
It's like a clown.
Yeah. And then Zorro goes in. I believe it's Zorro, right?
Yeah, Zorro.
And she speaks to Zorro in...
Yeah, she speaks French, seemingly.
And she speaks to Dani in Spanish, I think, right?
So she's obviously very talented at what she does. Like speaking in the native tongue when you're doing therapy, I imagine is very helpful for
your native tongue.
Yep.
I think it's interesting that Ted then seems like apprehensive. Do you think it's because he's like, oh no, in order to be on her level, I have to learn 2 new languages?
I don't think Ted's gonna learn another language at this point. He can barely handle
English.
Yeah, just like British phrases. Like, the boot. Like
I hadn't thought about that. He can barely get down the British slang. Oh no. Then we have Roy on the phone with Keeley. Keeley does apologize about, hey, she's like, I apologize for bringing the pundit job up. And Roy is watching a show called
Lust Conquers All.
Lust Conquers All, which I'm assuming is a spoof on some sort of British reality TV show.
Yeah.
What would be?
I don't know. I'll be
Too
honest.
Hot to Handle? Is that a British reality show?
I was just going to say, like, there's some guilty pleasure shows. Me and my wife have watched, we're not happy or proud to admit, but we've watched the Too Hot to Handle, and they are a blast.
I thought you guys did a podcast about that show. What do you mean you're not proud about it?
We should actually probably do a podcast on it. And Jamie fits right into this crowd.
Oh yeah, we find out all the women, and then Roy is sitting there. They're all having some vino, and who is on the cast of Love Conquers All?
But boom, Jamie Tart shows up, like much to Roy's chagrin. He just kind of sees it, but yet all the middle-aged women, yoga ladies that he's with are like super excited, like, oh, he's great.
Yeah.
But Jamie's line is just so fantastic. He's like, I'm the island's top scorer sexually.
Don't kick me off. I'm the top scorer. What I always find funny is those shows, they've got to have both sexes in bathing suits.
Yeah.
Bathing suits, not the most material, we'll say. But all these people have to wear microphones.
Yeah.
So in the end, they have like bathing suits and then just these weird wires that they're wearing. And so Jamie has got like all these straps running across him to hold his microphone. And so all the yoga women love Jamie, and this perturbs Roy. Yeah. Although I think Roy does get some pleasure out of watching Jamie.
I couldn't tell. Yeah, was he like upset seeing Jamie on the TV? Was he happy like that he's seemingly making a fool of himself? He asked for more rosé.
Right. I think he's happy that Jamie is making a fool out of himself. He is a little bit perturbed that these women all like Jamie because he knows that Jamie is a knob.
Yeah.
So...
But there you have it. Episode 1, season 2.
Episode 1, season 2. Was it better than you thought? Was it worse than you thought? I mean, did it carry along in the vein of season 1?
Listen, the first 5 minutes was not my favorite 5 minutes of television, if I'm being honest. I think there was other ways they could have given Rojas the yips than they did.
Is that because your favorite movie is Old Yeller and you were upset that they tried to top Old Yeller?
Yeah, that, and I have a tendency to hit people in the face with balls on accident.
So true.
It's
all
not
my
something
children have been hit by you.
It's not something I'm proud of, but it happens. It was just odd. I don't like the decision. I like what they did. I like the framework they laid out for this season with, again, we call her a foil, but it's just like the antagonist maybe of the season with the...
She's not even an antagonist, really. It's just like an opposing view from Ted.
Yes, I think that could be an interesting thing to explore. I'm not sure if they will. They kind of mentioned that was like her last day there, so this could be a one and done and just makes Ted think. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm still in it. I still love this show. Like, we have our small gripes, but the comedy is still there. I love my boy Nate. The Diamond Dogs are still at it, and Beard still has his little quips that are great. I love continuing to see Rebecca kind of grow and moving on from Rupert. I'm glad Rupert seemingly is not the main foil in the second season. I've mentioned multiple times how much we have a distaste for Rupert, so I'm glad they're going in a different direction there too.
I hope he comes back. No, I'm with you. I enjoyed it. Liked seeing all of our favorite characters come back.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that they brought Jamie back at the end, which lets
you
know, he's going to be coming back for some of the season in some way, shape, or form. So I'm excited. We appreciate all of you that are listening. If you have questions, gripes, or complaints, you can reach us at
teambingepodcast@gmail.com.
And then on Twitter, you can reach us at
just directly at Team Binge.
And then we also have a Facebook page.
We do have a Facebook page.
Is that what it's called, a Facebook page?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that. At Team Binge. So if that's your preferred social media, feel free to reach out to us there. We're not incredibly active on it, but if you reach out to us, we will absolutely reply and start the conversation. We always appreciate it. And we'll continue watching the show we love and have fun with you guys.
Thanks for joining us for episode 1, season 2. We'll see you next week for episode 2, Tom, which is, drumroll please, called
Nate's Bananas.
Nate's Bananas. This one's like mature rating, so be ready for it. Bye, guys.
Adios.